Okay, awesome. Well, we are back, Sarah, talking about your group and the group you're putting together based on the book Selling Like We're Human. And it's all about helping people get ready for selling in 2026 and beyond. And what we talked about doing for this session is to go through kind of what your plan already is for the sessions that you have and look at it through the lens of that do and the know, what are they having to do? What is it they need to know in order to do that? But then also you had said in your email to me too, which I loved, was let's look at it through the lens of feel as well and kind of look at each session through that. So we're going to jump into that. The one thing I will say before we kind of get into it is I have a framework called the three I's, which is part of what we'll look at this through, where it's first, it's information. So this is that know part, what are we sharing with people? And then it's about implementation. And this is where, we're getting them to do things, but we're also supporting them through it. Because as we've talked about, this finding a way to sell that feels good for you and feels good for your clients and really sets you up for 2026 and beyond, it's about changing how you do things. And so a big part of this will be what does that implementation support look like? And then at the further end of that framework is integration. And that's where what we've implemented, we figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then it starts to become second nature for us. And so in a group that, is the 5 weeks, we're probably limited to that information and then some implementation, but we may also kind of talk about what does the after program support look like, and that's sometimes where we get into the integration. So that's
Sounds
just
good.
kind of the foundation that I look at this through.
I like it. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So I have the breakdown of kind of what you're planning to do in front of me, but why don't you walk me through? We're going to look at each session that you're and kind of the plan that you have for it. And we'll start looking at it through that kind of do and know piece, identifying what is it that they'll be doing either in that session and or after that session, but before the next session depending on, how many people are in the group and how much time you have. But also identifying what is the know, what is the information they need to be getting in
Right.
that session.
hmm Okay,
Does
so
that
I'll start with the first session.
perfect?
And I'm just going to refer back to a LinkedIn post that you just shared around the first session, right?
Yes.
Like the success of the first session and whether it is content rich or relationship rich. I think maybe not the exact words, but that's the
Love that.
idea. And I
Mhm.
think yeah, that was brilliant. So that the idea really is not to overload people with, oh my god, there's all this content, and then leave them overwhelmed, I guess. And yet I know as a program creator that we have this tendency to feel like, oh, but I have to give them so much that they feel like it's valuable, right? And why would I spend, half an hour on just building a relationship? But your LinkedIn post just kind of gave me confirmation to say, no, it's important. That's what makes people want to come back. So that being said, that first session, yes, it really is about, arriving, holding the space together, asking about their expectations. What are they holding? What's present for them? And then sharing around, how they like their baggage. What do they come with in this course? Their experience, past experience with selling, and then hoping also to transform that towards the end of the course, and probably also bring that back in the fifth session and link to it and say, remember, here's where we started and here's where we're ending. Um, and then besides the relationship building, it really is about this first session is about the mindset piece. So sharing how we can change our yeah, mindset and our confidence around selling, and really sell like we're human in a very different way, and how when we give ourselves permission for that, that's when our confidence increases, because we're like, oh, I can actually do it that way. Then they feel much better about it. So that's the first session. In terms of the doing, what we're so towards the end of the session, because the second session is all around human design and kind of tapping into the knowledge of your chart, your human design chart, we need to kind of prep that. And so the doing is an introduction, a very short introduction to human design, but then also explaining the homework and what they need to have ready for the second session, so that yeah, they can come prepared for that human design work.
I love that. And so yeah, that it's this tension that exists where it's like somehow as the group leader, we feel like, our only duty sometimes is to like espouse, give information, right? Here's all the knowledge that I have, and here you go. And that pressure is real, right? I mean, people are saying yes, not just to hang out with you, right? And not just to hang out with other people. There's a reason they said yes. And yet, there's actually a barrier to learning because in order to learn, you have to feel safe, right? Psychologically, you need to feel safe. And if you don't know who else is in the group with you, that's a really hard ask. And so, what I like to kind of say and look at it as is like, this is about creating connection so there's safety, so the learning can take place, so that they are actually open to the new information. They're willing to, take a risk and take part and participate and fail because ultimately that implementation part includes failure, right? Because we're not experts in this. And so trying to pretend like failure isn't part of this puts us all at a disadvantage, but there's a safety that's needed in order to do that. So the other thing that I always say is you can get content through connection. So it's not that they have to be separate, but for example, when you were talking about, what are the expectations and what are the mindsets that people bring, those are a great way to get people to connect because as you know, there's a lot of shared discomfort with sales, right? Where many of us have similar experiences and we have kind of these same ideas of what like swarmy kind of gross sales looks like. And so that's a great connection content kind of piece is to get people sharing in those smaller groups and partners where they're talking about this is the mindset I kind of have, or this is the baggage, as you said, I'm bringing with me, and this is why I'm here, is to like not have to do that, but to find my way. And so it's this beautiful way of continuing with the content, like the purpose of the group gives you the structure for how the connection can take place.
Yeah, and it's like stepping into that vulnerability right away from the first call. And maybe I want to go back to the onboarding. We kind of didn't talk about that too much, but for me, the connection piece really already starts with the onboarding, because the plan is to have a conversation with everyone who joins the program, right? It's not just, click here and pay your fees. So the relationship with me already starts, and kind of the safety already starts there. But then this first call is where they meet everyone else. And usually I already send in the email who's going to be joining the call, so they
Love
already
that.
know that ahead of time as well. Because we have this idea of these online programs. Oh, there's going to be 50 people, 100 people. No, there's only going to be 5 of you. So it's good information to have, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I usually share that ahead of time.
I love that. I love the idea that you're having conversations, which is 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 absolutely the recommendation. And yet it seems like in this pressure to automize everything and make it, get the person to say yes as soon as they want to say, all the stuff that you're writing about that we're not going to do. But having that conversation really personalizes the experience for them. But also part of that is demonstrating there's there's a gate here, in order to get in. And it's not to try to, keep people out or anything like that. It's about saying, is this truly the right fit? And are you ready to really take this on? Because there is discomfort with this. There is failure that comes with it. So I love that you have that conversation. And then I love that you introduce people ahead of time, giving people that want to that opportunity to kind of check into it. But also for those that don't, it's okay. But there's this sense of you're being cared for. Sarah's got you, and she's really clear about who's in the group. So I love all that because I do think it just sets it up as something different, but also there's already a bit of safety that you've created before they even log into that first session.
Yeah, and it really actually is how to sell in 2026 and beyond, right? It would be so silly to say, "Oh, I'm gonna just sell the old way and teach you about how to sell." So this is me walking the talk and saying, "No, this is how you do
Yeah,
sales."
and I think we share that. That happens for me a lot. It's very meta what I'm doing. It's like I'm modeling everything that I'm showing you about groups while you're in group, all that kind of thing. But it's true, right? Like if you were doing all the different ways of selling, it just would be so misaligned. It would be so uncomfortable. It'd be like, what is happening? Whether it was conscious or not, versus what you're giving them the opportunity is to experience this way of selling. So now they have something even more concrete to kind of say, yeah, she did that. Oh, that was that part. And now suddenly it's like, oh, we have something to attach to. And it's like, how can I do what Sarah did, but do it my way?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Very
Mm,
cool.
mm.
And I also think just on the other part is that prepping for the design part is really important. Is like what are the steps that people need to take in order to be prepared? Because that's an important part of this. Because if people show up for sessions too and they don't have their chart, for example, it's not going to be a very impactful session for them. So you're really saying, not only is there work for you to do, but I'm preparing you for it so that you can get the most out of the next session.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a little bit of a worry of mine that people are not going to take the time to look into that because it is something very complex, human design, and I'm really just zooming in to one of the details. So yeah, I'm hoping, again, I'm probably gonna already prompt that during the conversations in the onboarding and kind of test, how much do you know about human design? So
Yeah.
it'll be very helpful to me to understand that they already have some basic idea around that.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's move on to session number two, which is then around human design and really helping them understand which parts of their chart can give them information around their ideal clients, uh, what they're really here for, what their main themes are in the world, and how that applies to what they're selling and what they're marketing. And from there, so that's kind of like the knowing, the understanding.
Yeah.
And then it gets very specific because they're going to be working on their client language vault. Very fancy term for for basically a document where they're going to work with AI to understand how their open centers and hanging gaze like what language that creates that aligns with them, who they are, but also resonates with their ideal clients. So what we're doing in the session is helping them work on that, and then they go off and yeah, kind of fill out that language vault with the help of AI. So I could never do this without artificial intelligence because we would need, I would have to, like, it's very transparent. I'm not a human design expert, right? I've studied it, had a mentor for years, but I don't know the information of every gate and every, open center and all of that. Um, but the beautiful thing is that nowadays, for this specific topic, business and marketing, uh, we can tap into the knowledge. We could use a book, right? But AI is just great because it taps into books and whatever is there. And so, yeah, I'm tapping into that knowledge by helping the participants, you know, give them the right prompts so that they can find out, well, how does this apply to my specific chart? So that's how we're creating this client language vault.
What I love about this is it so clearly defines what's being talked about, right? Like, human design is the biggest rabbit hole I've ever gone down, I think. So I just laugh at the idea of can anyone look at anyone's chart and know all the things? Because,
So
2 years
much.
in and I don't even know my own chart, like and so this idea though that you're saying, here's the boundary of this. And this is where, for me, the program promise comes in, right? Is you're very clear that this group is to help them with selling like they're human. And so even within this thing of human design, which could be like a whole program onto itself, we're using that program promise to say what within human design is important for selling like you're human, for the way to sell in 2026 and beyond. And here's the vault that you're going to create so that this is something that keeps going, right? Like this is one layer of this. This is the first attempt at it, and you're going to keep revisiting this as you go and have more sales conversations and start to learn even more about the language that really makes a difference for the people that you're looking to work with.
Yeah. And I really think the session is so individual and so empowering because they will know a little bit more about their design, as at least the things that matter for business and marketing and sales, and then tap into this, vast artificial intelligence to get that information, which again we couldn't have done even just 5 years ago. Um, and I think that makes the richness of this program, that it's not, if you hear anybody else's program, how to sell in 2026 and beyond, well, it's their opinion. This is
Mhm.
how you sell. But here it's like, no, you tap into your own design and use that understanding to sell like you're human because that's your human design.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's your humanness, right?
yeah,
And through your human design.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that difference. And then I also just imagine as people are doing this, what a rich experience it can be for them between sessions. And so I imagine they're coming back for session 3, kind of pumped to talk about, what that experience was like, what they learned, maybe for some, it'll have some things of like, I didn't really understand this. I still need to look into this. It's not going to be a one and done thing. But as you go into session 3, I imagine there's some debrief of some kind around all the nuggets that came out of that. And then what else does session 3 entail?
yeah. I think that is key again to create the spaciousness for that debrief. And we're gonna have a WhatsApp groups, and so I think a lot of that debriefing already can start on WhatsApp. But then yes, coming back and sharing, and then week 3 is really about the true value of your offering. So that's where we really go into the knowing of your offering, but it's also, we've kind of gone into the woo a little bit with the human design, but now we're making it very pragmatic and saying, okay, but just because you now have the language that is aligned with you doesn't make your offering ready to sell. So, what are the things that you need to look at in terms of your offering? So, your product, your program, whatever it is that you're selling, and then really looking at this idea of value. What is the value, the tangible value, and the intangible value, so that you can clearly express that, because that is the number one thing that holds people back from buying. We often think it's the price, but it's always the value, like people not understanding the real value of the offering. And so here, what I've worked on is a client value translation template. Again, really fancy term, but it's it's something, and that came up after our last discussion, because you asked me, well, how do people actually understand, what they have to talk about, the pain points, so to speak. And I was really thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, I need to help them reverse engineer, because coaches, consultants, change makers, they often talk about the benefits because that's what they want to work on. So we need to help them reverse engineer the value for the client. And so that's where this client value translation template
Love
came
that.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I love about this approach too is it's the reverse engineering. And again, it's very personalized. This isn't a script. This isn't a fill in the blanks, right? This is okay, great. You love to live in the space of benefits. That's why you're a coach. That's why you're a consultant. That's why you're a change maker. And now let's back into what is it that people are actually kind of experiencing and what will they truly value in what you're talking about, and
Mhm.
having the supports. Again, this is that implementation piece, right? Where it's like you can tell them that this is what needs to happen, but this tool is the implementation support to make it really come alive and mean something for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Very cool.
We didn't talk about the feelings. I want to just go back
Mhm.
and go back to, session one is very much about feeling at ease, feeling safe, feeling yeah, more confident and excited. Session two is, I guess, a lot of like aha, like human design. Whenever I use it in the marketing like we're human program, it's just like, oh my God, like if only I knew that information, like, years and years ago. So it's like this awe of finding out who they are and all of that. So a lot of curiosity, maybe some overwhelm because of the, having to use AI, and so I'm, yeah, planning for that. And then in this session three, um, yeah, I think they hopefully they will feel more clear about their offering. So clarity around this language translation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would imagine the clarity, if not of their own offer, is the clarity around what they're going to do next, right? Because in that session, they'll get started, they'll have, you'll give them the opportunity, but
Right.
this is like a bit of a longer, not, I don't know, like if I want to use the word longer, but it's an in-depth process to do this, right? This isn't a, sit down in 5 minutes, you figured it out. It's something that you spend some time in, you go back to, and you're kind of looking at it through. So it's like the clarity of at least what's ahead. If you're not
Yeah.
fully clear out of the session, you're at least clear on here's the support and here's what you're going to do in
Yeah.
between those sessions.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for naming that, because I think I'm hoping that we'll get clear in the first call when we talk about expectations, right? Yeah, this takes some work. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably a good part in those conversations you have with them at the beginning and even some of the email onboarding is what is the true time investment of this? Because you've got these 5 sessions and this is a this is a group where we do things. This is a
Yeah.
group where there is an expectation, but also an invitation, right? To really get out of this what you can. Here's, and whatever that looks like, but, somewhere around like there's an extra 2 hours that you're going to do in the week between or whatever that number is, and letting people know that because I see a lot of times where people kind of are looking at it as in session time only. And so they
Yeah.
put that into their calendar. And then it's kind of like, well, when does the implementation take place? And unless you've specifically designed your group to have working sessions and, to have these longer sessions where implementation is taking place in the group, it's kind of like, we're surprised that people are prepared for it and they're surprised that they weren't prepared for it, right? And so just being able to clearly articulate, hey, we have this amount of time that we're all together, but you can expect at least whatever that amount is in between sessions for you to really, in my language, it wouldn't be theirs, but to do the implementation stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to check what I've written in the frequently asked questions, but it's definitely something that needs to be there. Yes. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving into week 4.
Yeah, so week 4 is about the gentle sales path. So now kind of mapping out this sales path, and it's like in opposition to the sales funnel. How can we envision a gentle sales path? So just maybe they already have things in place, so we'll talk about those. And then I think quite, at least a half hour of the time, it's about practicing the gentle sales conversations. Because when do we ever get that opportunity, right? So that's where the gentle sales conversation guide comes in, where they will have some what did I call them in the book? I think, just smarter questions, or not your typical on a scale of 1 to 10, how, ready are you? Like those are just not good questions. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, it's a good, I think that's actually a good question. I don't like the numbers 1 to 10, but it's a good question in an intake form before
yes.
you have a conversation. But
Yeah.
then during the gentle sales conversation, like that's not a good question for me. So there'll be some prompts in the guide, and then just an invitation to, yeah, practice with
Yeah.
fellow participants.
And I love that because one of the things I say frequently is do in the group what only the group can do. And this is such a perfect thing that, sure, you could say to people, schedule a sale, practice sales with someone and all that. Like you could ask them to do it, but so many of us are so uncomfortable with it that we're not going to do that, right? Versus what you're saying here in this beautiful, safe container where you've now spent 4 weeks getting to know each other, learning about each other and the work that you do and kind of, really connecting. Now suddenly here's an opportunity to just practice it with someone who wants the best for you, right? Like we don't often get those opportunities. So I love that there's time for that practice in such a safe and loving environment.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. Okay, week 5, and this is our final kind of session. So there's that part of it too, but let's talk through what session 5 includes.
Yeah. Session 5 is then really about, this new era of selling, and has a lot to do with, yes, permission, but also, just understanding what's changing on the big picture, what people are actually ready to buy and how they're buying differently. Um, yeah, I think I joked last time that depending on the group, I'll bring in more or less woo. So it's gonna kind of like be designed on the spot. But I think it's yeah, really, for me, the big thing here is the permission piece, to bring as much of you to selling as you can. And and believing in that, really believing that that kind of work works. And the way it's different from, manifesting clients or any kind of law of attraction is that we're doing solid work to get there, right? Like it's not that's very much me. I'm like this, always this dance between the doing and the being, the right brain and the left brain. So no, we've done solid work on figuring out, our offer, yeah, the value, the client language. But now we're just going to trust that and fully tap into our being and kind of like trust the energy. So that, yeah, it's going to be I think a beautiful ending that I hope other people, depending on who's there, they may be more experts than me in that conversation. So yeah,
I love
excited.
that. I love that idea of like just acknowledging like, hey, there might be people in this room that know more than me in that. I think that is such a important but vulnerable place to be as a group leader, right? We sometimes feel this pressure. We have to be all the things, be the biggest expert. The reality is anytime we bring a group of people together, there's so much expertise that's meeting up. And it's like getting that expertise to be part of it instead of pretending it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, no,
The
I
other thing,
hate being in groups now where they don't take me as a smart contributor,
yeah,
right? Why would
right?
I do the same thing to others? Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, right. It's like, yeah, you have experience, you have something to say, and then yet it's not acknowledged, and
Mhm.
it's kind of like, no, my ego can't handle it, so don't bring it in, kind of thing, right? The other thing that comes up for me from a feeling standpoint, and just kind of what that last session is about, is like there's the permission of it, and then there's just instilling this belief, that was a word that you used, but also this confidence, because the reality is as people leave this group, they're going back into a world that hasn't quite adjusted and prepared for 2026 and beyond. A lot of what they're going to see as they're out there in the messages. So it's like, what do you need to do to care for and maintain this knowing that you're doing it different for a reason, and it's not because you're weird and it's not because you're wrong, but it is truly you're prepared for what's coming. And so there's a piece for me that's like, this group is going to stick with them and kind of be the reason they don't second guess themselves as much as they, start getting old
Yeah.
messages of what to do.
Yeah, so much so, just believing in your essence and saying, no, but this is my way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. One
mm,
of the things you talked about in the first session was revisiting at the end kind of that idea of where are you now, which I
yeah.
think is such an important part. And I will say it's one of the hardest things to do if it's not pre-planned, right? Because everything we think in this moment, we can't remember a time when we didn't,
Mhm.
right? And so part of that first session, whether it's you capturing it or them capturing it, it's kind of getting that check-in that they can then go back to, right? So as a group leader, if you're collecting it, whether you're writing the notes, saving the chat, whatever that looks like, and kind of presenting it to them. Or alternatively, you can get them to kind of say, like, in a place that you'll remember, because we're going to look at it again in session 5, what are your thoughts on sales, or what is your mindset, whatever those questions of connection are, then going back and having them in this session to review that. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's what we need in order to be like, oh, wow, yeah, things changed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So to either plan time in this session, or what I usually do, but it's not a promise, but I like surprises, but I often offer a bonus session like 2 weeks later and just say,
Yes.
hey, let's connect again in 2 weeks or 3 weeks and see where we're at now. Are there any questions that came up? And I think that would be a good time for that, like check in, where are you now? Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And yeah, clearly it's not a promise, but it's something that often happens. But even just that recognition, because I do think, first of all, I think in general, group closures aren't really seen as the sacred thing that they really are. This is an ending of people who have come together, have been vulnerable, have made strides. There is like real connection that takes place. So there's a sacred ending, and some time and attention to it is important. But also, it doesn't really end there. And, as a group leader, that's part of what you have to decide is like, what does the after program support look like, right? Are you involved in it? Do you kind of hand it over and make it really clear to people that, hey, the connections you've created here are yours to maintain and, keep me in the loop whenever you want to, or if there's something, but this is really in your hands. Or as a group leader, are you saying, here's my what's next, and here's what you can do? And, as many of you as it are called to, here's how we can continue to kind of work together.
Yeah. I think I'd like to give the option. It's like, here's my offering of how to continue this for not unlimited time, but for an amount of time. And if that is not helpful right now, please, I'm not going to hold you back. Yeah, on the contrary, I encourage you to stay connected. And so yeah, I think that's what we'll do is we'll offer both and see what's most helpful.
I love that. I love the idea of like holding both as possible and then the invitation and not being attached to what it is.
Mm.
My experience is when you create these kind of spaces that you're creating here, and people really do make strides and they really do connect with people. Most people are like, keep me here because there aren't that many spaces where that happens for them. And so it's unique, but it also feels good.
Hmm. Yeah, there's that
Very cool.
feeling again.
Yes, right? The feeling always is there.
Mhm.
Very cool. Okay, well, Sarah, I think that's it, unless you have anything else you'd like to talk about in terms of the program as a whole. We've gone through it each session, but is there any other
Yeah,
pieces you
no,
want to
I
talk
think
about?
it feels good. You're the you're the expert, so if you're saying, yeah, this sounds good, then yeah, we'll do it that way. And I think there's always room for spontaneity, and you know really creating a unique program for whoever is there. I think
Yes.
there's definitely wisdom in that. So
Yeah, right. And there is kind of that tension between, the structure so that you can deliver on the program promise and the vibe promise and still being responsive to what and who is in the room and what is coming up. And that is for me one of the signs of a true expert, right? Is that you have a structure, you know where you want to take people, and you're able to adapt if necessary to respond to what's going on. For example, I imagine there's going to be quite a bit of interest in human design, that piece of it, right? And so, being responsive to that and figuring out what does that look like and, how do you respond to it, keeping those boundaries in place, that type of stuff. So to me, that's a sign of a true expert is that person that can kind of go with that flow, but you've got the structure in place that you know that you're getting them to where you promised.
yeah, yeah. What I've learned from the Marketing Like We're Human program is that when people go quiet, that usually means that there's a piece of overwhelm. And
Hmm.
so I always make a note of checking in with people, personally, because usually it just means, well, overwhelmed with the program, or it can also be overwhelmed, in a different part of their lives, which also happens. But just that holistic approach to saying, you're part of this. Is everything okay with this? Or is there
Yes.
anything else that I need to know about that's going on in your life right now?
Yeah. I kind of have a reputation for people who work with me and have been in my groups that it's kind of like, who did Carrie call at the end, right? Like there's always a connection with one or two people, either those that, appear like you just want to check in, right? Like there's some silence there, or they didn't show up the way they normally do, or whatever. And sometimes it's also like the really engaged person that I want to talk to because I want to, understand kind of where they're at, what really stuck for them, that kind of stuff too. So it becomes this joke for people who are in groups with me is like, who did Carrie call or who did Carrie reach out to after it? So I love that part. Next time we are planning to talk about the resources, so the workbook, the guide, the discussion kind of pieces of this. And so we're gonna talk about those resources and then also the strategy of when and how to share them.
Cool.
Very
Yes.
cool. Awesome. Well, thanks, Sarah. We'll talk to you in the next one.
Yeah. Thanks, Carrie.